Velthar adjusted his sensory appendages as the transport ship docked at the Galactic Council station. Through the viewport, he could see the massive structure orbiting Thessar Prime, a neutral world where all species met to discuss matters of peace and trade. The station gleamed like a jewel against the darkness of space, built over thousands of years by the greatest minds in the galaxy. He was not excited about this assignment. For 200 cycles, his people, the Quentari, had followed the same protocol. When a new species joined the council, they sent an observer to study them. It was a position usually given to junior diplomats or those who had made mistakes. Velthar had made no mistakes. Yet here he was, assigned to watch the newest members of the galactic community, humans. The species had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 cycles ago. They came from a planet called Earth, located in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. From what Velthar had read in the files, they were completely ordinary. They had no natural armor like the Krathos, no venom like the Silthar, no telepathic abilities like the elder races. They were just soft-skinned bipeds who died after barely 100 rotations around their star. The transport doors opened and Velthar made his way through the station corridors. Other species passed him. The towering Krathos with their thick stone-like skin, the graceful Yulani who floated rather than walked, the ancient keepers who had been exploring space for 10,000 years. All of them were remarkable in their own way. And then there were the humans. The council chamber was already filling when Velthar arrived. He took his position in the observer's gallery, a space designed for diplomats who watched but did not vote. Below, the council members took their seats in a circle. Each species had one representative. The chamber could hold thousands, but today only the regular members were present. Council Prime Ixtar called the session to order. The crystalline being's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language. Velthar activated his recording devices. His job was simple: watch, listen, and report back to his government about whether humans would be valuable allies or potential problems. The human ambassador entered last. Velthar leaned forward to get a better look. Ambassador De Quan was smaller than most species in the room. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations except a small symbol on his chest. His face was smooth, his hair dark, and his eyes moved constantly, observing everything. He walked with confidence, but there was nothing physically impressive about him. The council began with routine matters: trade disputes, colony boundaries, scientific exchanges. Velthar found himself bored until the discussion shifted to the Fracken swarm. The Fracken were becoming a problem. They were a hive-mind species from the outer rim, and they had been expanding aggressively for the past 10 cycles. 3 colonies had fallen already. The council had sent diplomatic messages, but the Fracken only responded with more attacks. Council Prime Ixtar asked for recommendations. The Krathos ambassador suggested fortifying the border systems and waiting. The Fracken would eventually stop expanding once they reached defendable territory. This was standard galactic doctrine. Most wars in the galaxy were not fought to win, but to create stalemates that forced negotiation. The Yulani representative agreed. Violence should be minimized. Defensive positions would save lives. The elder species nodded. They had seen countless conflicts over thousands of years. The pattern was always the same: aggression, defense, stalemate, negotiation, peace. Sometimes it took decades, sometimes centuries, but it always ended the same way. Then Ambassador Day spoke. "With respect to the Council," he said, his voice calm and clear, "a purely defensive strategy may not be sufficient. The Fracken have shown no interest in negotiation. If we only defend, we give them time to grow stronger. I suggest we consider aggressive reconnaissance. Send small, fast teams into Vraken space to gather intelligence. Find their supply lines. Understand their command structure. Learn their weaknesses. The chamber fell silent. Council Prime Ixtar's crystalline form flickered. Ambassador Day, your species is new to galactic conflict. We appreciate your input, but offensive operations against a hive mind species are extremely dangerous. The risk of casualties is unacceptable. Risk is part of any military operation, Day replied. But information reduces risk. Right now, we know almost nothing about them. That ignorance is more dangerous than a reconnaissance mission. The Krathos ambassador made a rumbling sound that Velthar's translator rendered as dismissive laughter. Spoken like a young species. You will learn, human. The galaxy does not reward recklessness. Day nodded politely. Perhaps, but the galaxy also doesn't reward ignorance. The vote was called. The council decided on defensive fortifications. Ambassador Day voted with the minority who wanted more aggressive action, but he accepted the decision without protest. Velthar noted this in his report. Humans seemed willing to work within the system, even when they disagreed. The session ended, and the ambassadors dispersed. Velthar decided to follow the human, keeping his distance. He wanted to observe how Day behaved when not in formal settings. The human made his way to one of the station's observation decks. These were large rooms with transparent walls that offered views of the stars. Day stood alone, hands clasped behind his back, staring out into the darkness. Velthar approached carefully. Humans had decent hearing, but they lacked the sensory range of most species. Ambassador Day, Velthar said, announcing his presence. I am Observer Velthar of the Quentari. I have been assigned to learn about your species. Day turned. His face showed no surprise. Observer, welcome. What would you like to know? I observed your suggestion in the council. Aggressive reconnaissance. That is unusual thinking for most species. Is it? Day looked back at the stars. It seems logical to me. How can you solve a problem if you don't understand it? Most species prefer to minimize risk to their own people. Your suggestion would place human lives in danger. Yes, Day agreed. But doing nothing also places lives in danger. Sometimes more lives. The question isn't whether there will be risk. The question is which risk is more acceptable. Velthar found this reasoning strange. In his experience, most species avoided direct risk whenever possible. What are you thinking about right now? He asked. Day was quiet for a moment. I'm thinking about all the ways this situation with the Vraken could go wrong, and I'm preparing for each one. That seems pessimistic. No, Day said, and now he looked directly at Velthar. It's realistic. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That's how you survive. Velthar recorded the conversation. He noted that humans seemed to have an unusual relationship with risk. They acknowledged it, analyzed it, but they didn't seem afraid of it in the way other species were. Over the next few days, Velthar continued his observations. He watched Ambassador Day interact with other diplomats. The human was polite, professional, and remarkably patient. But Velthar noticed something else. Day was always watching, always learning. He asked questions constantly, not just about politics, but about military capabilities, trade routes, and historical conflicts. It was as if the human was gathering information for something. One evening, Velthar found Day in the station's library, reviewing historical records of galactic conflicts. The human was watching recordings of battles that had happened centuries ago, taking notes on a small device. Research for a report? Velthar asked. Day looked up. Just learning. You can't understand the present without studying the past. You study war extensively for a species that claims to value peace. Day smiled, but there was something serious in his eyes. We value peace because we understand war. The two aren't opposites, observer. They're connected. If you want to preserve peace, You need to understand what threatens it. Velthar left that conversation feeling unsettled. There was something about humans he couldn't quite understand. They seemed soft and weak physically. They had no natural advantages, yet they carried themselves with a quiet confidence that didn't match their apparent limitations. In his report that night, Velthar wrote, "Humans are not impressive in physical form, but they possess an unusual psychological trait. They seem to prepare constantly for possibilities that may never occur. This may be a survival mechanism from their evolution. Further observation is needed to determine if this trait is beneficial or simply paranoid." He had no idea how wrong his initial assessment would prove to be. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant by preparation. The alarm woke Velthar from his rest cycle. Red lights flashed throughout the diplomatic quarters at Meridian Colony. His translator picked up the automated message immediately. "Emergency evacuation protocols activated. All Council personnel report to evacuation shuttles immediately. This is not a drill." Velthar grabbed his belongings and rushed into the corridor. Other diplomats were already moving toward the landing pads. The Yulani floated past him in a hurry. The Krathos stomped heavily, their stone-like feet cracking the floor panels. "What's happening?" Velthar asked a passing guard. "Vrakan swarm, sir. Massive force. They came out of nowhere." Meridian Colony was a mixed-species settlement on the border zone. It housed about 5,000 residents from different worlds. The Galactic Defense Force maintained a small garrison here, maybe 200 soldiers. It was meant to be symbolic protection, not a real military force. Velthar reached the landing pad and saw the chaos. Ships were launching as fast as they could be loaded. Most species followed protocol perfectly. The Galactic Council had clear rules about evacuations. Council members and diplomats first, essential personnel second, everyone else after that. But something was wrong. The human section of the colony wasn't evacuating. Velthar could see the human residential area from the landing pad. Instead of people running toward ships, he saw them moving in the opposite direction. They were carrying weapons and supplies toward the defensive walls. A Yulani diplomat floated beside him. "Foolish humans. They will die if they stay." "Why aren't they leaving?" Velthar asked. "Who knows? Young species often make poor decisions in crisis." Velthar made a choice that would change his life. Instead of boarding an evacuation ship, he activated his recording equipment and moved toward the human section. If he was supposed to observe humans, then he needed to see what they did in real danger. He found Captain Una Park directing her soldiers at the main gate. She was a compact woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. She wore combat armor and carried a rifle that looked oversized for her frame. "Captain!" Velthar called out. "Why aren't you evacuating?" Una barely glanced at him. "Because we have 800 civilians in this sector and not enough ships to move them all before the Vrakan arrive, so we hold." "But you only have 200 soldiers. The Vrakan force is estimated at 50,000. "I can count, observer." Una pointed to a group of humans building barricades. "Jin, get those barriers higher. Tay, I need those gun emplacements online in 10 minutes. A young man ran up. "Captain, the children are secured in the underground shelters. Nari is with them." "Good. Make sure they have supplies for 5 days." Velthar watched in amazement as humans transformed the colony sector into a fortress. Engineer Tae Wan was converting agricultural machinery into weapons platforms. Medical Officer Jin Lee was setting up triage centers in reinforced buildings. Teacher Nari Song was organizing civilians, making sure everyone knew their emergency roles. "Captain, this is suicide," Velthar said. "Council protocol requires evacuation." Una finally stopped and looked at him directly. "Observer, you're welcome to leave, but we don't abandon our people. That's not protocol. That's a promise." The Vrakan arrived an hour later. Velthar had never seen them in person before. They looked like insects, each one the size of a large dog, with multiple legs and sharp mandibles. But they moved with terrifying coordination. The hive mind controlled them all like one organism. They didn't need to communicate or plan. They just attacked in perfect unison. The first wave hit the defensive walls with brutal force. The humans opened fire. Velthar had seen military engagements in recordings. Galactic warfare was typically fought at long range with energy weapons and careful tactics designed to minimize casualties on both sides. It was civilized, calculated. This was not that. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked him. They used automatic projectile weapons that fired hundreds of rounds per minute. They threw explosive devices that ripped through clusters of Vraken. When one position was overrun, they fell back to prepared secondary positions and kept fighting. Captain Yuna was everywhere. She directed fire, repositioned troops, and personally carried wounded soldiers to safety. She didn't hide behind her rank. She fought alongside her people. On the second day, Velthar watched Engineer Tay detonate a series of explosives that collapsed an entire section of tunnel the Vraken were using to infiltrate the colony. The explosion killed hundreds of the creatures, but it also destroyed infrastructure that took years to build. "Why would you destroy your own colony?" Velthar asked. Tay wiped sweat from his face. "Buildings can be rebuilt, people can't be replaced." That night, the Vraken changed tactics. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, trying to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. The humans adapted immediately. They created kill zones with overlapping fields of fire. They used booby traps and ambushes. They even played recordings of Vraken distress signals to confuse the hive mind's coordination. Velthar realized something disturbing. The humans weren't just fighting. They were learning. Every Vraken attack taught them something new, and they adjusted their tactics immediately. They treated the battle like a problem to solve, not just a fight to survive. On the morning of the third day, medic Jin Lee ran past Velthar carrying medical supplies. A Vraken soldier burst from a damaged wall, its mandibles reaching for the medic. Jin dropped his supplies, pulled a sidearm, and shot the creature 3 times before it could attack. Then he calmly picked up his supplies and continued to his destination. "How can you be so calm?" Velthar called after him. Jin looked back. "Because people are depending on me. I can panic later." Velthar was recording everything. His people needed to see this. The galaxy needed to see this. By the third afternoon, the situation was desperate. The humans were running low on ammunition. They had taken casualties. The Vraken showed no signs of stopping. Velthar calculated that the humans could hold for maybe another 6 hours before being completely overrun. Then the human fleet arrived. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above the colony. They immediately began firing on the Vraken forces with surgical precision. Dropships landed, and fresh human soldiers poured out, reinforcing the defensive positions. The Vraken, suddenly facing a much larger force, tried to retreat. The humans didn't let them. They pursued aggressively, destroying the Vraken's transportation and command structures. Within 2 hours, the battle was over. Velthar stood among the ruins of Meridian Colony, watching human soldiers move through the aftermath. They were collecting their dead with careful reverence. Every fallen soldier was treated with respect. Their names were recorded. Their families would be notified. But what shocked Velthar most was the casualty count. 0. Despite 3 days of brutal combat against overwhelming odds, every human had survived. Many were wounded. Some would need extensive medical care. But not one had died. Captain Yuna found him in the debris. Her armor was scorched and dented. Her face was covered in dirt. But she stood straight. "How?" Velthar asked. "How did you do this?" Yuna looked around at her people. "We trained for this. We prepared for this. We knew it was possible, so we planned for it. And when it happened, we executed the plan. But you were outnumbered 250 to 1. Numbers don't mean everything, observer. Training means something. Preparation means something. Will means something. She paused. And knowing that failure isn't an option means everything. Teacher Nari emerged from the shelters with the children. They ran to their parents, and families reunited in tears of relief. Velthar watched a human soldier, barely older than the students, kneel down to talk to a frightened child. The soldier showed the child his weapon, explaining how it worked, turning something scary into something understandable. Engineer Tay was already drawing plans to rebuild the damaged sections. Medic Jin was treating wounded Vrakan soldiers alongside wounded humans, showing the same care to both. Velthar recorded all of it. That evening, he sat down to write his report. He started 3 times and deleted each attempt. How could he explain what he had seen? How could he make his superiors understand? Finally, he wrote, "Previous assessment incorrect. Humans are not weak. They are not unprepared. They possess a capability the galaxy has not seen. They fight not with superior weapons or natural advantages, but with something else: coordination, adaptability, determination, and something they call refusing to quit. Further observation is essential. What I witnessed at Meridian Colony was not luck, it was skill. And if this is what humans can do with 200 soldiers, what could they do with an army?" He sent the report and looked out at the humans working through the night to repair their colony. The galaxy, he thought, had seriously underestimated these creatures, and the Vrakan were about to learn that mistake firsthand. Velthar had never been to Earth before. The human homeworld was smaller than most Council worlds, orbiting a yellow star that humans called Sol. As his shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he saw vast oceans and continents covered with cities and green forests. It looked peaceful, ordinary. Nothing about it suggested a warrior species. The shuttle landed in Geneva, one of Earth's major cities. Ambassador Day met him at the landing pad. The human looked different here, more relaxed, like he was on home ground. "Welcome to Earth, observer," Day said. "Thank you for accepting our invitation. Your government said you wanted me to observe something important. We do. Come with me." They traveled to a building that looked old but well-maintained. Inside, the architecture was simple but functional. Day led him through security checkpoints where armed guards scanned them carefully. Finally, they entered a large room deep underground. The room was filled with humans, military officers in different colored uniforms, civilians wearing business clothes, scientists with portable computers. At the center was a large table with a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy. "This is our strategic command center," Day explained. "The people in this room are responsible for planning Earth's military operations." An older woman with gray hair approached. She wore a dark blue uniform with several medals. "Observer Velthar, I'm Admiral Han Jay, commander of the Human Defense Fleet. Please sit. You're about to see something no non-human has ever witnessed." Velthar took a seat in the observation area. His recording devices were active. Admiral Han called the meeting to order. "Let's begin. General Mira, your assessment?" A woman with short black hair stood. General Mira Choi pulled up images of Vrakan-controlled space on the holographic display. "The Vrakan swarm now controls 17 systems. They have destroyed or captured 42 colonies. The Galactic Council's defensive strategy has slowed their advance, but not stopped it. At current rates, they will reach core Council worlds within 3 years. "The Council's response?" Admiral Han asked. "Fortification of border systems, defensive fleets positioned at key jump points, standard galactic doctrine. They're preparing for a long stalemate." "And our response?" General Mira smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We don't do stalemates." She changed the display. New images appeared, showing detailed maps of Vrakan territory. "We propose Operation Typhoon, a multi-phase offensive designed to eliminate the Vrakan threat completely. Not containment, not negotiation, complete victory. Velthar couldn't stay silent. You want to attack? That's extremely aggressive. Admiral Han turned to him. Observer, may I ask you a question? In the past 1,000 years, how many major galactic conflicts has the Council fought? 17 that I know of. And how many did they win decisively? Velthar thought about it. None. They all ended in negotiated settlements. Exactly. Because the Council fights to minimize casualties. That's admirable. But it means wars last for decades or centuries. Billions suffer during those long conflicts. Admiral Han leaned forward. We fight differently. We fight to win, quickly and decisively. That actually saves lives in the long run. A man with glasses spoke up. Director Hyun Baek. Intelligence. We've been studying the Vraken for 2 years. We have agents in their territory right now. Impossible, Velthar said. The Vraken would detect any infiltration. Director Hyun smiled. They detect electronic surveillance and ships. They don't expect individual operatives moving through their supply lines. We have 17 agents currently operating in Vraken space. They've mapped their logistics networks, identified their hive structures, and found their weaknesses. A younger woman stood. Dr. Sora Im, Xenobiology Division. We've analyzed Vraken biology extensively. They're a hive mind, which gives them coordination but also creates vulnerabilities. We've developed several weapon systems that target their neural connection. These weapons are non-lethal to other species but extremely effective against Vraken. Velthar felt a chill. You developed weapons specifically to kill them? To stop them, Dr. Sora corrected. We've also developed methods to break their hive connection without killing them. Once separated from the hive mind, individual Vraken become confused but alive. They can potentially be rehabilitated. But you're also prepared to kill them if necessary, Velthar said. Yes, Admiral Han said simply. We prepare for every possibility. That's our way. General Mira pulled up new displays showing human military forces. We have 200 warships ready to deploy, 300,000 ground troops, 5,000 special operations soldiers, and full logistical support for extended operations. We've been preparing for this for 2 years. 2 years? Velthar was shocked. You've been planning this war for 2 years? Longer, Director Hyun said. We've been studying every conflict in galactic history since we joined the Council. We've analyzed tactics, strategies, and outcomes. We've run over 10,000 combat simulations. We've identified patterns that other species miss because they've been fighting the same way for millennia. Admiral Han stood and walked to the holographic display. The galaxy fights wars to avoid losing. We fight wars to win. That difference is everything. When you fight to avoid losing, you make defensive choices. When you fight to win, you take calculated risks. She pulled up a detailed battle plan. Velthar saw arrows and symbols he didn't fully understand, but the scope was clear. Multiple simultaneous attacks across dozens of systems, coordinated strikes from space and ground forces, cyber warfare, psychological operations. It was overwhelming. This will cost lives, Velthar said quietly. Yes, General Mira agreed. We've calculated between 8,000 and 15,000 casualties if everything goes according to plan. More if it doesn't. And you accept this? The room was silent for a moment. Then Admiral Han spoke, her voice softer. No, we never accept casualties. But we acknowledge reality. If we don't stop the Vraken now, millions will die over the next decade, maybe billions. So we choose the option that saves the most lives, even if it means risking our own. A young officer raised his hand. Admiral, the Council hasn't approved offensive operations. I know. That's why this is a human operation. If the Council wants to help, they're welcome to join us. If not, we go alone. Velthar understood the implication. Humans were willing to start a war without Council approval. That was unprecedented. "Why show me this?" he asked. "You know I'll report everything to the council." "That's exactly why we're showing you," Day said. "We want the council to understand what we're doing and why. We're not rogue actors, we're not warmongers. We're a species that has learned hard lessons about what happens when you wait too long to act." Dr. C. Sora pulled up historical images from Earth. Cities destroyed, people suffering, wars that consumed entire continents. Our planet fought wars for thousands of years, wars we won and wars we lost. We studied every one of them. We learned from every mistake. We promised ourselves that when we reached the stars, we would never let those mistakes happen again. "We know the cost of war," General Mira said. "But we also know the cost of inaction. Sometimes the moral choice isn't the peaceful one. Sometimes the moral choice is to fight, quickly and effectively, to protect those who can't protect themselves." The meeting continued for hours. Velthar watched as humans discussed logistics, tactics, and contingencies. They had backup plans for their backup plans. They had considered scenarios that seemed impossibly unlikely. They had trained for situations they hoped would never happen, but what struck Velthar most was their attitude. These weren't glory-seeking warriors. They weren't eager for battle. They discussed war the way engineers discussed a difficult project, something necessary but not desirable. At the end of the meeting, Admiral Han approached him. "Observer, I want you to understand something. We don't celebrate war. Every name on our casualty lists is a tragedy. Every soldier we lose is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. We remember them all. We carry that weight." She pulled up a digital memorial. Names scrolled by, thousands of them, soldiers who died in Earth's wars. "This is why we prepare so carefully. This is why we train so hard. This is why we fight to win quickly, because every day a war continues, more names get added to this list." That evening, Velthar stood on a balcony overlooking Geneva. The city was beautiful at night, lit up and peaceful. He could hear music from somewhere. Children playing in a park. Ambassador Day joined him. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking your species is terrifying," Velthar said honestly. "You plan for war while living in peace. You prepare for death while celebrating life. You're a contradiction." "No," Day said. "We're realistic. We know peace doesn't maintain itself. It requires constant work, constant vigilance, and yes, constant preparation to defend it. You can't have one without the other. The galaxy isn't ready for your way of war." "The galaxy doesn't have to be ready," Day said quietly. "They just have to survive it." "And we'll make sure they do." Velthar sent his report that night. He tried to explain what he had seen, but words felt inadequate. How do you describe a species that studies war like science and wages peace like warfare? He ended his report with a warning. Humans are not what they appear to be. They are not weak. They are not naive. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they understand danger better than anyone else. The Vraken are about to learn this. The galaxy should prepare to witness something it has never seen. Humanity at war. The war began at dawn across 12 systems simultaneously. Velthar was embedded with the human fleet, given a position on the command ship Indomitable. Through the viewport, he watched human warships drop out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They moved like a school of fish, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. Admiral Han J. stood on the bridge, calm and focused. "All ships report ready, Admiral," an officer said. "Execute Operation Typhoon. Begin Phase 1. The fleet moved forward into Vraken territory. The Galactic Council had launched their defensive campaign the day before. They positioned ships at border systems and waited for the Vraken to attack. It was textbook galactic warfare, defensive, cautious, safe. The humans did the opposite. They attacked first. They attacked everywhere, and they didn't stop. Velthar watched the tactical display as human forces struck Vrakan supply lines, communication hubs, and staging areas. The Vrakan, expecting the humans to defend like everyone else, were caught completely off guard. Phase 1 complete, an officer reported. Moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 was even more aggressive. Human special operations teams began hitting targets deep in Vrakan space. Velthar received reports of impossible missions succeeding. A team of 12 humans destroyed a Vrakan breeding facility that housed 50,000 warriors. Another team sabotaged a command center, killing 3 Vrakan queens. "How are they doing this?" Velthar asked a human officer standing nearby. The officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Rena Kang, smiled. "Training. We practice missions like these hundreds of times before we attempt them for real. By the time we go operational, we've already succeeded in simulation." "But simulations aren't real." "No, but they teach you to think, to adapt, to solve problems under pressure. That's what matters." On the 3rd day, Velthar was transferred to a ground operation. He joined Commander Wu Xin's Special Operations team as they prepared for a mission that sounded suicidal. They were going to infiltrate a Vrakan hive ship. The team consisted of 20 humans, each carrying specialized equipment. Commander Wu briefed them in the transport ship. "Our objective is to plant a logic virus in the ship's hive-mind connection. This will disrupt their coordination across this entire sector. Estimated enemy forces, 10,000 Vrakan warriors. Estimated mission time, 40 minutes. Questions?" "What's our extraction plan?" a soldier asked. "Same way we came in. Fast and loud." The team laughed. Velthar didn't understand the humor. This was clearly dangerous. They launched from the transport in small pods, each designed to look like space debris. The pods drifted toward the massive Vrakan hive ship, undetected by their sensors. When they got close enough, explosive charges blew holes in the hull, and the humans stormed inside. Velthar followed, his recording equipment capturing everything. The interior of the hive ship was dark and organic, more like the inside of a living creature than a spacecraft. The Vrakan warriors responded immediately, pouring toward the breach in a coordinated wave. The humans were ready. They moved through the ship like they had memorized the layout. They used explosives to seal off corridors. They fired their weapons with precise efficiency. When one approach failed, they switched tactics instantly without needing orders. Velthar watched Commander Wu lead from the front. The human moved with absolute confidence, calling out targets and adjusting the team's formation as the situation changed. This wasn't just training. This was art. They reached the central chamber where the hive-mind connection was strongest. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the air smelled like copper and decay. "Plant the device," Commander Wu ordered. 2 soldiers ran forward and attached a small metal box to the organic wall. It began humming, sending corrupted signals into the Vrakan network. 30 seconds to activation," one soldier called out. The Vrakan seemed to realize what was happening. They attacked with desperate fury. The humans formed a defensive circle around the device, firing constantly. 3 soldiers went down with injuries. The others dragged them back while maintaining fire. 10 seconds. A Vrakan warrior broke through the defensive line. It charged directly at the device. Commander Wu intercepted it, tackling the creature and fighting hand-to-hand. The Vrakan's mandibles slashed across Wu's armor, cracking it. 5 seconds. Another soldier shot the Vrakan, killing it. Commander Wu rolled to his feet, bleeding from cuts on his arm. The device activated. Every Vrakan in the chamber suddenly stopped moving. They stood frozen, their hive connection disrupted. Across the sector, thousands of Vrakan ships lost coordination. "Extraction! Now!" Commander Wu's voice was strained but steady. They fought their way back to the breach point. 8 soldiers were wounded. The mission cost them 40% casualties. But they had succeeded. As they escaped in their pods, Velthar looked back at the hive ship. It was drifting now, its crew confused and disorganized. The humans had done in 40 minutes what the Council couldn't do in years. In the medical bay later, Velthar found Commander Wu being treated for his injuries. "You almost died," Velthar said. Wu shrugged. "But I didn't. Mission accomplished." "Was it worth it?" "8 of your people were wounded." Wu looked at him seriously. "That virus will save thousands of lives, maybe tens of thousands. 8 wounded versus tens of thousands dead." "Yes, Observer, it was worth it. That doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Those 8 soldiers are people I care about. But sometimes you have to accept pain to prevent greater suffering." Over the next 60 days, Velthar witnessed humanity's way of war. He saw pilot Rena Kang fly her fighter through a debris field that should have been impossible to navigate. She pushed her ship beyond its design limits and her own body beyond its tolerance, pulling maneuvers that made Velthar's vision blur from the acceleration. When she landed, she could barely walk, but she had destroyed 3 Vraken cruisers. He saw engineer Tae Won, the same one from Meridian Colony, design a weapon that used the Vraken's own biology against them. It was brilliant and terrifying. He saw medic Jin Lee work for 36 hours straight, treating both human and Vraken wounded without rest. When Velthar asked why he bothered treating enemy soldiers, Jin said simply, "Because they're hurt. That's enough reason." He saw Ambassador Day arrive at liberated worlds, immediately establishing hospitals and schools before military garrisons. The human explained, "We don't just fight, we build. Every world we liberate gets reconstruction aid. That's part of the mission." Velthar noticed something else. Humans mourned their dead intensely. After every battle, they held ceremonies. They spoke the names of those killed. They contacted families personally. They carved names into monuments. Death wasn't just a statistic to them. It was a tragedy they carried forward. But they didn't let grief stop them. They used it as motivation to fight smarter, to prepare better, to ensure each sacrifice meant something. On day 90 of the offensive, Velthar reviewed the strategic map. The humans had pushed the Vraken back across 8 systems. They had destroyed 40% of the Vraken fleet. They had liberated 20 colonies. The Galactic Council's forces, fighting defensively, had barely held their positions. Velthar recorded a message for the Council. "I can no longer simply observe. I must warn you. Humans fight unlike any species we've encountered. They don't fight for territory or resources. They fight for ideas, for principles, for each other. This makes them unpredictable and incredibly effective." He paused, then continued. "But here's what truly frightens me. This isn't even their full capability. They're holding back. I've seen their plans. I've read their history. They have weapons they haven't used, tactics they haven't employed. They're fighting carefully because they're trying to minimize all casualties, even enemy casualties. If they ever decide to truly unleash their full capability without restraint, I don't think anything could stop them." He sent the report and sat in his quarters, thinking. In 90 days, humanity had accomplished what the Council couldn't in years. They had proven that aggressive, coordinated warfare was more effective than defensive stalemates. But they had also proven something else. They could be brutal when necessary, yet they remained compassionate. They could wage war with terrible efficiency, yet they still valued peace. They were a contradiction that somehow worked. The Vraken homeworld was next. Velthar knew this would be the true test. When humans reached the heart of their enemy's territory, would they show mercy or would they reveal the darker side of their nature? He would soon find out. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward the final confrontation. Velthar gripped his seat as the stars stretched into lines. Whatever happened next would determine how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vraken home system. Velthar stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the view screen. Ahead was the Vraken homeworld, a dark planet covered in hive structures. Billions of Vraken lived there. This was the moment that would define everything. Admiral Han Jae stood silent, studying the tactical display. Around the planet, the Vraken had positioned their entire remaining fleet, 300 warships, their last defense. "Admiral," an officer said, "all ships report ready. Weapons armed." The Galactic Council was watching this battle through communication links. Velthar knew every council member was waiting to see what humans would do. Would they show mercy, or would they destroy an entire species? Admiral Han opened a communication channel, not just to her fleet, but broadcasting to every ship in the system, including the Vraken. "This is Admiral Han Jae of the Human Defense Fleet. To the Vraken Hive Queens, I offer you one chance. Surrender now. Face trial for your war crimes. But you and your species will survive. Refuse, and we will do what we came here to do. You have 1 hour to decide." The bridge was silent. Velthar watched the Vraken fleet. They didn't respond. They didn't retreat. They simply waited. 59 minutes passed. Then the Vraken attacked. Their fleet surged forward in a coordinated wave. The hive mind controlled them perfectly, each ship moving in sync with the others. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The human fleet met them head-on. What followed was the most intense battle Velthar had ever witnessed. Human ships moved with impossible coordination, their weapons firing with precise timing. They used the Vraken's own hive mind against them, predicting their movements and exploiting their patterns. Within 2 hours, the Vraken fleet was destroyed. Now came the moment everyone was waiting for. The planet lay defenseless. The human fleet had weapons that could destroy entire continents. Velthar had seen them in the arsenals. Weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Weapons that could poison an atmosphere. Weapons that could end a species. Admiral Han gave her orders. "Begin orbital bombardment. Target only military structures. I want 0 civilian casualties. Use precision weapons only." Velthar watched in amazement as human warships fired carefully aimed strikes. Each shot hit a military base, a weapons factory, or a command center. Residential areas were left untouched. The humans had mapped every structure on the planet and programmed their weapons to avoid civilians. "Admiral," an officer reported, "Vraken ground forces are mobilizing in the capital city. They're using civilians as shields." "Then we go down there," Admiral Han said. "General Mira, begin ground operations. Rules of engagement remain the same. Protect civilians. Minimize casualties on all sides." General Mira Choi commanded the ground assault from a transport ship. Velthar accompanied her, along with Ambassador Day. As they descended toward the planet's surface, Velthar saw thousands of human soldiers preparing for the most difficult type of warfare, urban combat in a densely populated city. The transports landed on the outskirts of the capital. Human soldiers poured out, moving through the city with careful precision. They used non-lethal weapons when possible. They warned civilians to evacuate. They established safe corridors for refugees. The Vraken fought desperately. They set traps. They ambushed human patrols. They fought from every building and every street corner. The humans adapted to every challenge. Velthar followed a squad led by Captain Yuna Park, the same officer who had defended Meridian Colony. She moved through the streets with her soldiers calling out commands. "Contact left. Non-combatants present. Use stun weapons only." The squad fired blue energy beams that paralyzed Vraken warriors without killing them. Civilian Vraken watched from windows, confused and terrified. "Someone translate," Captain Yuna ordered. "Tell them we're not here to hurt them. Tell them to stay inside and they'll be safe." A soldier spoke in the Vraken language, his translator device working perfectly. The civilians retreated deeper into their homes. The fighting continued for 3 days. Street by street, building by building, human forces secured the capital. It was slow and dangerous work. Soldiers were wounded. Some were killed. but the humans never stopped trying to minimize casualties. On the fourth day, they reached the central hive structure where the Vrakan queens resided. This was the heart of their civilization, the source of the hive mind. If the humans destroyed this, the entire Vrakan species would become disconnected and helpless. General Mira stood outside the structure with Admiral Han, Ambassador Day, and Velthar. Human soldiers surrounded the building, but they hadn't attacked. "We could level this building from orbit," Admiral Han said. "End this in minutes." "But we won't," General Mira replied, "because that's not who we are." Ambassador Day stepped forward. "Let me try talking to them." He entered the hive structure alone, unarmed. Velthar followed with his recording equipment. Inside, they found the 3 Vrakan queens sitting on elevated platforms. They were larger than normal Vrakan, with elaborate markings on their shells. Around them, hundreds of warriors stood ready to attack. "I am Ambassador Day Quan of Earth," Day said calmly. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your military is defeated. But your people can still live. Surrender now. Face justice. Let your species survive." The largest queen spoke, her voice translated by Velthar's device. "Why would you show mercy? We attacked your colonies, killed your people. We are your enemies." "Yes," Day agreed. "You are. But that doesn't mean we have to become like you. We fight to stop threats, not to commit genocide. Our goal was never to destroy your species. Our goal was to stop your aggression." "You could kill us easily." "Yes, but we don't want to. We want to build a galaxy where different species can coexist. That only works if we show restraint, even with our enemies." The queens were silent for a long time. Finally, the largest one spoke. "We surrender." The war ended. 6 months later, Velthar stood in the Galactic Council chamber. He had been asked to give his final report on humanity. Every council member was present. They all wanted to understand what had happened. Velthar stepped forward and began. "For 200 cycles, I observed humanity. I watched them fight. I watched them struggle. I watched them win. And now I understand what makes them legendary." He pulled up images from his recordings. Meridian Colony, the War Council, the Offensive, the Homeworld Battle. "I thought their legendary status came from their weapons or their tactics. I was wrong. Humans are legendary because they understand something the galaxy has forgotten. War and peace are not opposites. They are partners." He showed the council how humans prepared for war with complete dedication. Then he showed them how humans built schools and hospitals in the worlds they liberated. Humans fight with terrible efficiency, but they never forget why they're fighting. They're willing to sacrifice everything to protect others, but they refuse to become monsters in the process. He showed footage of human soldiers risking their lives to save Vrakan civilians. They are capable of extreme violence, but they choose restraint when possible. They can destroy a species, but they choose rehabilitation instead. This duality is their power. The council members stirred. Some seemed confused. Others appeared thoughtful. "But there is more," Velthar continued. "Humans remember every battle, every mistake, every sacrifice. They study their history obsessively. They learn from every failure. This is why they're so effective. They have thousands of years of warfare to draw upon. They've made every possible mistake already, on their own world, fighting each other. Now they use those lessons to fight smarter." He showed the memorial walls, the names of fallen soldiers, the ceremonies, the records. They honor their dead by ensuring their sacrifices mean something. Every fallen soldier teaches the next generation how to fight better, how to survive, how to win while staying true to their values. He displayed the final statistics. In 6 months, humanity had accomplished what the Council couldn't in years. They had defeated the Vrakan threat. They had liberated 50 worlds. They had saved millions of lives, and they had done it while remaining compassionate. The galaxy called them legendary before understanding why, Velthar said. Now I can explain. Humans are legendary because they make war itself afraid. They fight with such dedication and skill that their enemies know they cannot win. But they fight with such restraint and compassion that their enemies know surrender is possible. He paused, looking around the chamber. They are the only species that truly understands this truth. The best warriors are those who fight not for glory, but for peace, who prepare for war not because they love it, but because they understand the cost of being unprepared, who honor their dead by building a better future. Council Prime Ixtar spoke, their crystalline voice echoing. What would you recommend to the council? Learn from them, Velthar said simply. Not just their tactics, their philosophy. They offer to share everything they know, their training methods, their strategic thinking, their technology, because they understand that a stronger galaxy is a safer galaxy for everyone. The vote was unanimous. The Council accepted humanity's assistance in reforming galactic military doctrine. Later, Velthar found Ambassador Day in the observation deck where they had first met. Your species has changed the galaxy, Velthar said. Day smiled. We just showed you what you already had. The capability was always there. You just needed someone to demonstrate it. But you're different from us. Not as different as you think. Every species has the capacity for both violence and compassion, strength and mercy. We just learned to balance them. You can too. Velthar looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vraken were rebuilding under Council supervision. Human advisors were helping them transition to a peaceful society. It would take time, but it was possible. What will humans do now? Velthar asked. What we always do, Day replied. Hope for peace, prepare for war, build a better future, and remember those who made it possible. Velthar understood now. Humanity's legendary power wasn't one thing. It was everything together. Their preparation, their adaptability, their compassion, their ferocity, their memory, their hope. They were legendary because they had learned to be human in a galaxy that had forgotten what that meant. And now, as humanity marched forward into the stars, the galaxy marched with them, ready to learn those lessons for themselves.